as far as the grassy and so forth.
Let that go for now, and I might be able to solve it and see, but I think we pretty well got that set under my last meeting. But maybe some backup.
Okay, we can address it.
How about you and your knee?
We got a one.
We got
Oh, yes.
She wants to go to something else. He's been training.
Be nice.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm in.
Oh, you're West Virginia. We lived in West
There's
Virginia.
no- we don't-
We lived in West Virginia,
Oh, okay, yeah, I know. Yeah, so I actually did a land use project for water this summer. And it wasn't, it wasn't. We got through it though, we got it. But yeah, no, you're the only coastal community.
Hands on everybody.
No, I'm staying with friends. Yeah, no, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I was like, just driving from here to beach.
Yeah, I've been using it for friends. And sometimes during the season. Yeah, during the winter.
Are we live? As far as voice?
Oh, okay. Yeah, God, we got some up there.
So people on Zoom may want to turn off their camera.
Yes.
Thank you.
Look at this, we're bringing up 20.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad. You did a great job there. We're waiting for it.
Miss Robin, if you can hear us, you could probably turn off your camera if you like.
Thank you. Oh, and we've got 30 seconds before we start.
Did you get that big from Jimmy?
Yeah.
So we're still transmitting, even though we don't have the full screen up. We're good.
Correct.
Okay, good enough. Okay, this is the November 1st City Council meeting, 2023 for the city of Deerheart. Is there any conflict of interest declarations?
No.
No. Okay, then let's move on to the minutes. The regular meeting of the city council, Wednesday, October 4th. Motion,
I'll give you a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of the city council Wednesday, October 4th, 2023, but I do have some corrections.
if you have corrections, let's have.
On page 2, and this is just a minor grammatical correction, but it is on about halfway down the page. If you look to the right where it says for landowner, it should either say for the landowner damage tags or just for landowner damage tags. Councilor Devereaux gave more explanation on the reasons for landowner damage tags, or I'll let him decide which is better. That was his statement. Page 2, about halfway down, look on the right side, the ending sentence is for landowner.
What's the problem for my explanation of?
Well, I'll
for
read
the
I'll read
landowner?
the sentence for you as written. Counselor Devereaux gave more explanation on the reasons for landowner damage tag. Do you want an S on tags or do you want it to be specific, the landowner damage tag?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Tags.
Okay, so an S on tags, and then on page 3, again, not a big change, not a substantive change, but just about the second paragraph. Third line from the bottom says until the police department is fully trained, I would say until all officers on the police department are fully trained. But then again, that's a city treasurer report, so maybe, I don't know if you wanna, does that sound good? Okay, those are the only changes I have.
Okay. So, a motion to accept the minutes as corrected, I believe is what we're gonna say, and
I'll second it.
second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Planning Commission report, are there any questions for Chad about that? Nothing? What?
I have a question. Sorry.
Okay,
Chad, why did Wally withdraw his?
He chose to withdraw and then go back and make some changes to his presentation to accommodate some concerns that there were. So he's working on that now. If he wouldn't have withdrawn, he would have gotten a denial, then it would have been a year until he could have brought it back. So him and his team are taking it back, going through it, and then they plan on coming back. Not sure when.
any other questions? All right. Mayor's report. I'm gonna say I attended the Elk meeting on Monday. That's all I'm gonna report on. Thank you. Councilor reports. Let's start off with Preston.
Monday's meeting was. I don't wanna step on anybody's toes, but the elk problem that's happening out north of the city here has nothing to do with your. We are an incorporated city and we got boundaries and, you know. I realize that the elk situation, you know, everybody's loves the elk here in Gerard and everything like that, but it is really a city problem. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Can I add to it?
You can when it comes your turn. Okay, Rita.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Councilor Sharon for even bringing up the elk situation at the last city council meeting. I believe what she stood up and said really motivated us to get the facts and to invite the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to come here. And I was very surprised and happy with the turnout. I've gotten quite a few emails about the situation. And I usually don't get many emails about stuff that's going on here, so that was really nice. And I did miss the last regional housing task force. I was ill, but Chad went, so you'll have to clue me in on that. And I will be attending the next regional housing task force meeting later in this month. And then I did have a nice chat with Chad regarding what the next step should be for the bench committee, and we talked about all sorts of things like what polywood is, what wood is, what color should be. And he suggested that the bench committee make a formal presentation to the city council at our next council meeting so that the council can decide yea or nay if we should proceed and how. We already know what we want to do, but we need to present it to you.
Right,
And so that should be on the agenda next month, and that's all I have.
great, thank you. Dana,
Okay, so start off with my shout outs. My first shout out is to Justine, who apparently was the spirit of Halloween in the office yesterday. I wish I could show you all the picture of her costume, but she was Daphne, and her sidekick was her dog, who was Scooby. So thank you for doing that.
It was on point.
Keeping with the Halloween spirit, thank you to the fire department for your efforts yesterday, the fire department. You guys setting up out there, I saw it as I drove by on my way to my event. I thought that was pretty cool. You only get that in a small town like this, and that's, like I said, pretty cool, especially from volunteers. Police chief, another shout out to the police chief who passed his first management class. So that's great for us, and for Officer Mars, who is progressing well and prepared to go to the academy next month.
On the 14th.
Yes, okay. So this last month, I attended the League of Oregon Cities State Conference in Eugene. While there, I attended the counselors workshop, and it was a very interesting workshop, and some of the stuff that I learned in there I shared with you the other day. More stuff I'm sure will come up along the way. I also attended the Women's Caucus group, and I know that you both received invitations to join. I don't know if you want to join or not, but it's a growing movement addressing the concerns of counselors, and it's a supportive group. It's just starting to get its legs. So I don't know that much about it, but I joined because I'm always up for learning more. And so I encourage you to do it. It doesn't require a lot of participation. You just sign up and you get the emails, and you learn something you might not have known otherwise. I also attended training on tax measures 5 and 50, which left me horrified and wanting to run out of the room. That's pretty scary. That was an eye opener for a lot of reasons, but the overall, the biggest thing from that is that what I thought that people don't know is that while we are capped at, our tax revenue only increases by 3% per year. If you're watching our budgets, you're seeing that our expenses are increasing, our government expenses increase at a much higher rate. So that's going to be an interesting situation for us somewhere in the near future. That's something that we have to start projecting for and figuring out. Also sat through an interesting presentation on urban growth boundary expansions in some of the other cities in the state that have had success, and some of the others that have had some struggles with those. I learned a few things. I also attended numerous discussions and emails with citizens concerning the local elk. And I'm signed up to go to the Friday Small Cities meeting in Rockaway, which the League of Oregon Cities meeting, if you all want to attend. If not, I'll come back and give you every kind of what we talked about.
thank you, Dana. All right, now you can.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Just one quick thing, I participated in the Oregon Shakeout, which is the drill for if we have an earthquake scenario. My participation was to go to the closest assembly area to my house, and also to check in via ham radio, because I'm a ham radio operator. And there's a large network of us who check in for the shakeout. 3 people showed up at the assembly area for the shakeout, and they were on their bikes, and they said hello, and then they left. The other thing I wanted to say is I feel that the elk situation is a city matter, and the reason I feel that way is twofold. Number one, a lot of the elk that were killed were our elk population. And number two, I think that because of the amount of concern among our citizens in the city, that this needs to be a city issue. I'm not saying that we have any say in the matter. I don't know, because I've never been involved in a situation like this before, so I don't know what we could do or not do as a city. I have a few ideas, but I really need to sit down and think about it and hear from people some more.
All right, thank you. Everyone's got the police chief's report in their packet or on the desk. I don't believe he's here,
No, in the evening also.
right? Okay. Next. Fire Chief Como.
Thank you, sir. You guys all have the breakdown report, and then I'll go over the overview with you real quick, and a couple other thoughts. Last month, we had a total of 79 calls for service. A quick side note for that, last week in alone, we had 17 calls. Saturday alone, we had 9 or 10 calls on that one day alone, so we've been really busy with what's going on. 32 calls was inside the city limits, 35 was in our fire district. We sent out auto aid 12 times, 8 of those was to Seaside. Once to a building fire. While we were on that building fire, we had 2 chimney fires at the same time going on, so we went one to the other and came back to that. And then 3 of the times they did some extra manpower. They had multiple calls at a time, as well as a smoke complaint. Someone called in a smoke complaint in the area, and they were on other calls, so we went that one for them. And then a water rescue. They needed help with, somebody was in the river bridge that separates us and Seaside, so both of us go to rescue calls from there. And then the Astoria, Hamlet, Warrenton, and Cannon Beach, we went to a building fire for each one of those. So we've been super busy with fires alone with that. We received aid 4 times. 3 of them we asked for Seaside's help. 2 of them were car crashes we needed help on. One was last weekend up in the logging roads. There's a car that rolled off the edge because of how far out it was. I asked for Seaside to come and help with some of the rescue gear and equipment they had. And then we had an elevator rescue at the condos at the same time as we had a car crash on the highway. So because we had 2 calls at once and we're handling it, but once somebody passed out in the elevator, it became a more urgent call. So I sent Seaside to go cover that one. And then we had Oregon Department of Forestry come in and help us with, there was a rubbish fire back here, Bernstein's from there, which they always come in to help with those. How that compares with last year, October of 22, we had 41 calls for the month. So about half the calls last year is this year. We ended October 22 on call 597. We ended this year on 660, so we're 63 calls to date out of last year. To prep council, next month I'll have some financial information for you. We had 3 weeks ago, we had our pump testing and our DOT testing, our maintenance with our apparatus. 2 of our rigs failed DOT testing and 1 failed pump testing, so we'll have to have some repairs done to those to get those approved to be on the road and pump how we're supposed to pump and approved from all that. I don't have any even estimates in yet, so I can't even give you anything other than dollar signs will be coming next month with that. The hiring firm that we're using for the division chief talked to me today. They have 4 applicants that have applied in there. 1 or 2 of them look like they could be pretty good, and 1 or 2 of them look like they just applying because they want to come live in the great place that we are. So some of them are really, really good that I think could benefit us, and we'll have to see how those work out, or if there's just a lot of people to send applications and go from there. So all we know right now is what the applicants look like on paper. They have not really made personal contact yet. So that's what the hiring firm does and handles all that for us, and they get the full package. They'll let us know what goes on from there. Unless there's any questions, that's all.
Do you have a timeline? Do you have an idea when you'll be setting up interviews?
No, I told them to keep it open until filled, because I didn't want a date in case there wasn't enough. I was here, we wouldn't get enough. Once we get 2 to 4 solid applicants after they've gone through the whole process from the hiring firms in, then we'll set a testing date, bring those all in, go through those ones and see if we get a solid candidate for those ones. And that way, if by some reason we don't get anybody, then it's still open and still going from there.
And also, I had asked you to look into those things to put in the windows. This might interest you too when.
They're ready for me, I have to go get them.
Okay, yeah, so when I went to the Great Ready, they had signs that you can hand out to citizens that you could, if something were to happen, you would have a sign, you could put it in your window saying, I'm okay, you don't need to waste your time here, or I need assistance. It's a green or a red sign. And I asked the chief to get us more so that we can hand out to the city if anybody's interested in getting those.
I have a guy running up north tomorrow, so I'll maybe have him pick him up on the way, so hopefully.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
thank you guys.
master of money.
Daphne.
So revenues continue to come in steady. 2 years ago, CIS insurance carrier, which is our liability insurance carrier, partnered with Safe Corporation to provide workers' comp coverage. CIS provided that service previously, but they partnered with Safe. And when Safe's financial position is strong, they return part of the workers' comp premium back to policyholders. It's one of the really nice benefits of the SAFE program. This year, the city of Gerhart received 24.11% of our standard premium, or $4,294, which was put into the account 100021, which is a miscellaneous account. There's some other things in there, but that's what that 4,000 is in for. Interest earnings continues to be exceptionally strong. Our local government investment pool, which is where we have most of our banking, well, we have all of our money in our savings account, has continuously increased their earnings rate, and at this point, hopefully will remain steady. It is throughout our budget, very strong revenue line. Quarterly tax for both the marijuana and the transient room tax were due this last period, and both were slightly lower than last year, but very comparable. There was not a significant gap, and we do have a couple more checks that were received after this report was printed. So we're not really anticipating any real loss there. Those two revenues are really important because we don't really want to see them dropping. We want to at least see them consistent, especially transient room tax as we lose permits. So even losing permits, we're still staying pretty strong. There has been 2 more conflag mobilization reimbursement checks received for a Lookout Fire and a the Coast support. The building department has had an exceptionally strong month on several new projects, very large projects that have come in. So that revenue just shot off the roof. Expenditures don't look like they've shot off the roof, but we pay our building inspector the month after. So he gets a percentage of all the revenue, so we will see some costs come down in a big revenue month for us. In expenditures, the police department had insurance retro payments due to new employees having 60 days to register in account 10-1208 health, life, and disability. So it looked like a big jump, but we had some new police officers and there's a gap. We have to pay the premium back, but they have a time to get, you know, if they need birth certificates or marriage license or other things, signing up for supplemental plans, that kind of thing. So we had a little bit of a catch up in October. They also purchased new office equipment in 10-1281 to provide for efficiency and better security. If you haven't seen it, you might want to stop in there because it looks much better and it feels much bigger and has given them a lot more space in there. Chief Gregory's trying to make it comfortable and also safe with the computers and the 3 people in one office. The fire department had a payment in 10-1372 purchase services, which is for the assistance with the recruitment of the vacant division chief that Chief Como had mentioned. In the next month, we'll be sending out business license renewals with a new application, which has been a collaborative project with the building assistant. We are going to have a section in there that they have signed off, that they have read the comprehensive plan, the sign ordinance. And so we're still working on that. It's not a complete document, but we have increased it from 1 page to 2 page. And hopefully we'll get some more information and just clarity to help our new business people as they come in. And to make sure that they know that there are other regulations out there that they should be aware of. We're also getting ready for calendar year end. I can't believe it's November. We'll be facing W-2s, taxes, quarterly reports as we come up the next month. And I want to remind property owners that we really do appreciate people calling and inquiring about their water bills. We have a third-party meter reader company that sends a human being down and manually reads every one of our meters in Gerhart. So he physically looks at those meters and he keys in the number. And to err is to be human, and they can often, they can be wrong. So we really appreciate the assistance if you feel like something's wrong and your consumption seems really off. We want to try to work with you and our public work department to try to determine if there is an issue, so never be afraid to call us. Things happen.
That's it?
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Just real quick, can you comment a little bit on, if anybody's reviewing these along with us and notices how high we are on the workers' compensation, how it might look like we're a little forward of our projections, but
So-
my understanding is that it's just the payment schedule, right?
We pay annually one payment, so they don't actually increase the whole year. It's what we pay now is locked. And then what happens at the end of the year, so they estimate based on our salary projections, and they send us a bill and we pay that bill. And we put it out, so January 1 through June 30 has already been posted in here. And in June, they do an audit. And then in July, if there's a plus or a minus, they'll send us a check. So that number will not increase. So the numbers that you see in there are the numbers that we have for the 2023-24 workers' comp.
Thank you.
That it? All right. Peter.
Okay, a few things, and I had looked at elk issues. It was so long ago that we used to have a student counselor who wrote a report on elk, but I refreshed my my memory on regulatory issues, so I can answer questions about that if people want. Couple of things, there's a case out from the Oregon Court of Appeals, Fields v. City of Newport, which could impact some recreational immunity. There's some fixes that we might want to consider. Perhaps some signage indicating that city pathways are for recreational purposes only. Perhaps that on our website as well, just so that people understand that if they're using our path, that is for recreational purposes. And then if we're talking about some of what we'd hope our member of the House and Senate will look at, recreational immunity is something that we might want to mention, because what had been pretty clear as far as our immunity has been less clear. And I think a lot of those concerns could be dealt with signage and other matters, but it would be nice to get a little bit of clarity from the legislature if they're willing to do that. We have some water related issues and agreements that'll be coming up later that I was working on, but just as a reminder to everyone, as part of our agreement with Warrenton, we did agree that we would pursue other water supplies. We would do that in good faith, and that's what we've been doing. So reaching out to other jurisdictions, seeing who has availability, as well as kind of looking at our own capacity and seeing what we can do there. So if people wonder why are you having these conversations, because we want to be a good neighbor of Warrenton, and because we contractually agreed to do so. So those are two, I guess, good reasons. As far as very briefly on elk, something I didn't know prior to whenever we first started having elk visitors in the city, the elk are owned by the governor. So the governor actually owns all the wildlife in the city of Oregon, which is why the governor has the governor's tag that serious hunters can purchase, and that what we can regulate is human behavior within the city of Gerhart. And so if you recall, when we did ordinance that prohibited feeding of wildlife, that's something that we were able to do. So it's easier for us to regulate humans than it is the elk. There's strict rules around because they don't want elk to be harassed, and so they're very strict rules as far as making noise or doing other things to the elk. Years ago, we had there was an organization called Oregon Solutions that were looking at these issues. And the kind of preliminary question in my mind was, well, how many elk are there, and is it 1 herd or 2? And what's unfortunate is over years, a lot of work was done, but we still don't have that kind of answer. Is how many elk are there, and is it 1 herd or 2? And is from having conversations with the Oregon Department of Wildlife, that's kind of a critically important piece of information, because people can disagree on what, and this is their term, I guess, not my right sizing of a herd would be, but if we don't have that predicate information, it's difficult. And so as far as advocacy, I know that people probably feel pretty strongly on this. It really is advocacy of the state. Because other than regulating what people can do in Gerhard, and they can't do much. I mean, they can't feed them, they can't discharge a firearm, they can't do any of those things. It's really up to the state in order to do that. So if people have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But the law has not changed on elk since at the very beginning, when people were scared about the elk's impact on their pets, was really what brought it up the first time. So anyway, that's what I got.
Thank you, Peter.
Question. Are you still working on the signage information for us?
Election signs.
Yeah. Yes, and actually there's more clarity on that.
Do you think that we could be ready for that by like December, January?
Yes, I would anticipate having a draft for you in December.
Okay.
And we can regulate, I believe we can regulate the duration that the signs are up, the size of the signs. We can regulate signs in right away, meaning prohibit. Interestingly enough, the state of Connecticut cannot. It's one of the things I found out during my thing. So there's states where anyone can put up a political sign in the cities right away, but that's not where we're at. So I should have something ready. And then the other thing is we could limit like 1 sign per, I believe, 1 sign per candidate. So if it's, so like not 50 signs for the same person on 1 property, but like if someone wants to put up a sign for state senate or state house or US House or whatever, they could do that. But as far as like if they want to put up 20 signs for, you know, whoever's running for judge, we could say no, that 1 sign would be sufficient in order to get their viewpoint, for them to provide their viewpoint on it.
What are your thoughts on perhaps requiring that any signs that are posted within the city also match state ordinance and be consistent with state ordinances? Because I think the problem last year was people were like, well, you know, who's putting up these signs, and they couldn't figure out who's putting up the signs. And you would have to refer to the state, and then the state is so backlogged that, I mean, it's basically the signs get to stay up the entire election cycle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that obviously there's a local ordinance and there's state law, and anyone that's doing this should comply with state law. And it's one thing if someone wants to hand paint a sign or something where it's obviously not from a campaign. But if it's from a campaign, I would expect that it would meet state law requirements. But we can specify that in our code.
Okay, well, I'm sure that'll be a conversation we have later. I just want to make sure that we get it wrapped up before we go into the next election cycle, especially because we're talking about putting some important stuff on.
Right, and there's some ambiguity. There's some ambiguity in the laws, like with anything else, and so the more we regulate, the higher risk it could be. But we're certainly able to have time, place, and manner restrictions.
Thank you, Peter. All right, Chad.
Sure, real quick. On my update, I'll just highlight three things. Public Works staff has been working with an organization to put AMI meters, automatic metering infrastructure in. Some of the issues that we're talking about with the misreads and leaks and things like that. So we're actually installing these devices that will report to City Hall on an instantaneous basis what's going on with our meters. We're starting with 3 meters. We're gonna give that a shot, then we're gonna run some cost estimates, what this is gonna take, but we think that initially that this eventually will save the city of Gerhart a lot of money, time, and potentially water as well. So I'll report more as we know that those meters tests are happening as of today. Signage is something that working with Councilor Fackrell on the benches. I noticed also in the Parks Master Plan, we gotta start talking about a signage design for the city of Gerhart. We haven't really gone through that, so that's something that I want you folks to think about, how we can accomplish that, but to talk about what our look is going to be for our signs, because as Peter alluded to, with some of the things with immunities on parks and trails and things like that, we're probably gonna have to start doing some more signage. And before we do so, we should make it look like it's something Gerhart, make it look like Gerhart. So I'll be approaching you with some ideas and we'll figure out how to get through that, but something to think about. Good news, finally, thank you, Christy, for writing the grant. We did receive a $35,000 grant for our infrastructure emergency water project. So we'll be installing a generator system on our water reservoir, which will help with the resiliency of our system. So that was great news. So we did that project as we get those funds.
Good job, Christie.
That's all I have for now, unless there's any questions.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That basement construction project on Ocean,
Yes. Mike Mulligan and the steam shovel.
was that starting to cave in the land underneath the neighboring house or what?
Yeah, there was some sloughing happening. There wasn't any damage that was done, but there was a worry that it was gonna continue. The construction, I don't have all the details, but the construction folks took care of it short of now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it happened a little unexpectedly to them. There wasn't any damage.
And does Leonard get involved in that? Is that his purview or?
Yeah, he definitely keeps into it, but and especially if construction issues are going to start affecting a neighboring piece of property, which is, you know, also a civil matter between the two. So he went down, took a look at it, said that they fixed it up nice and no problems.
I don't know about the fixed up nice. They've got a couple of hefty walls leaning up with a brace on it right now.
I wouldn't go down in there, but that's why the fencing off has happened. So they're keeping that site secure, but so far, yeah, the building official didn't have any additional concerns after they fixed that.
Have you found a concrete contractor to do the sidewalk work?
No.
And if the budget, or not the budget, but the grant ends in November, does that look like the whole project will be shelved?
Project will be shelved for now until we can find somebody, but what we're approaching the Oregon Department of Transportation for is an extension on that. But one of the reasons that we're finding that this is so difficult is we underestimated what the costs were going to be. I mean, we got into this grant prior to, or right in the middle of COVID. And then when everything was said and done, the cost increases just went beyond the $100,000 project. So Peter's helped us with this. He's got a gentleman to look at it and said that we're a little short on the cost. So we're working with Oregon Department of Transportation, trying to retain that grant and figure out how we're gonna move around to get it done. The other issue is that concrete folks around here seem to be pretty hard hit in regards to employees. Some of the larger firms have definitely pared down to small projects only. And they weren't willing to go ahead and put in any bids for a project even the size of Real, which I didn't think was very big.
Yeah.
But so we're still working that
So
problem.
that's the sidewalk on Pacific Way on the south side.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the price of concrete's double also.
Yeah.
So.
So
Yeah,
you
we're-
get 50 feet instead of 100.
50 feet instead of 700, yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's kind of where we're at with this, right?
Right, well, with labor charges, you get the 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
we'll more to report on that. I'm a little worried about it, but I also have learned that there's a lot of grants in that same
Okay,
situation, Jeopardy.
good enough.
Okay, well, I know this has nothing to do with you really, it's more to do with the council, but I wanna have another work session. And have the CIS training that we need to have for reporting.
Okay.
As part of it, and then we can go over the sign information you were just alluding to. And if we can do that sooner than later, sometime in December. Early December. Let's not go December 23rd or something like that, that's.
24th.
Thank you, Preston. But if you'll put that in the works, I'd appreciate it.
Team and I work on that.
All right. All right, so that's all the officer reports. Now we're gonna go on to visitors, specific for Lisa Dunlap. Is it a Lisa? I think got it right? Wow, good job.
Would you like me to stand or sit, or what would you like?
You can sit right there, everyone can hear you, I believe.
If you cannot hear me, I will project louder, pretty loud. Well, thank you for having me. I feel like I haven't met some of you council members. I'm actually a resident here. But my job is regional, so I'm the regional manager for Pacific Power. I cover 3 counties. Plaza County, Lincoln County, yes, I skip over Tillamook. They're served by a public utility district, and then I actually have part of Multnomah County, so I do serve part of Portland. Christy and I had a few different email exchanges. I think you would like some clarification on our Blue Sky program, but I would like to hear from you, your questions, before I start launching into an explanation of a question that you may not have.
How did we fail?
So you didn't fail. So what happened is the EPA, so let's kind of back up the train. In 2017, I believe, y'all signed on to be an EPA green power community. So that means that the city of Gerhart purchases amount of energy equivalent to cover their energy usage with green power. So up to whatever the threshold is set by the EPA. So at the time, the EPA had certain benchmarks to meet that communities could elect in. They restructured their program in 2019 and increased the amount that communities would need to purchase green power to offset their usage to be considered a green powered community. You all benefited, and many of our customers did, because Pacific Power made a change to how we structured our own program. So the EPA increased, Pacific Power decreased the amount, well, increased the amount of renewable energy you get for the same amount of dollars. So we had a change, there was a change in the renewable energy credit, so REC market. So we're talking kind of big energy concepts here. So if anybody has questions about what a REC is, it's basically the renewable attribute. So when an electron is generated from a renewable source, whether that's solar, wind, those are the 2 big ones in Oregon, you get a renewable energy attribute, and that's called a REC. So you can purchase that and then basically green your energy. So I just want to be clear that when we say you're purchasing a renewable attribute, it doesn't mean that you can say your power comes from a specific site in Oregon. You can do that if you're net metered, but I won't get into that. That's kind of getting into the weeds. But essentially, Pacific Power changed the way we structured our program and made it so that the block sizes that you purchase of renewable energy credits, RECs, doubled. And we did that because the REC market was super cheap. And so we thought, well, why not double what we are giving customers per block? Fast forward 1.5 years after that. So we're talking 2021, sort of mid-COVID, prices went about 300% up. You were talking about concrete prices, I mean, everything just escalated. So we kind of had to reverse course and go back to our regular block size. So EPA made changes, we made changes, we reversed those changes, EPA kept their changes. So essentially what happened is EPA is now requiring communities to purchase more renewable energy credits to offset their usage to be a green power community. So if Gearhart would like to continue to be a designated community, and I can talk about the pros and the cons of that if we want to get into the details, then you would need to increase your purchase. And I do have some details on what that cost would be to the city on an annual and monthly basis. Yes.
Okay, so my notes here say, wind power and solar and everything like that.
Mhm.
How much power, how much electricity are you guys buying from Honolulu Power Administration? And is that considered a renewable resource?
So hydropower is not considered a renewable
Why not?
resource in the state of Oregon. Ask your state legislature who made that rule about a decade ago. We do not, so Pacific Power owns, operates, maintains most of our own generation. We buy very little on the market. We do buy power on the market, but we can't actually buy from Honolulu Power Administration unless they sell it into a market we can purchase from. EPA sells basically only to their own customers, of which those are the municipalities, the public utility districts, the co-ops, publicly owned power providers. We are
So neither
private,
PG&E or you get any BPA.
not unless they're selling on the market, and then they sell to a market, and again, sort of getting into the weeds, they sell to a market called the Mid-C. Why it's called the Mid-C, I'm not really sure, but we can purchase power from that market, but we don't buy directly from EPA.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you give us some numbers?
Yeah. Okay, so you are currently purchasing 33% of your usage in renewable energy credits. To be a green power community, you need to be at 50%. The cost currently is $159.90 per month, or $1,918 per year. If you want to be at 50%, it's $211.80 per month, or about $2,500 a year.
You speaking just about the city
Yes,
or the community?
the city. So this is city-owned meters. This is not residential meters. Residential customers can participate in the Blue Sky program. All of this is voluntary. None of this is a mandatory program. This is what customers elect to do with their dollars. And I have a couple of copies of this. I can use this with you.
That would be great. And you're not looking for a decision right this second, are you?
No, so that's the other thing I want to make sure I'm being clear about. The program, you can opt in or out at any time.
Justine, this is coming your way, can we get copies of that?
You can opt in or out at any time.
Right,
You
okay.
can increase, decrease that as already.
Okay, am I incorrect in reading somewhere in here that for the entire community to be labeled as participating in this community, in this group, we have to be, the city has to be fully involved in purchasing at the $211 rate, is that correct?
Right, so the way that the green power community designation works, again, this is run by the EPA, they set the rules on how that is structured. Yes, it is based on city meters. So you can also talk about your residential customers, but that isn't going to get you a EPA designation, if that is important to you.
And for those that don't know, the EPA designation is it's just a point of pride. It's not, is there any financial benefit? Is there any other type of benefit to our community?
It is a point of pride that you are electing to do this purchase for the good of the environment. It's environmental stewardship.
Well, Lisa, can you give me an estimate in the districts that, or the areas that you serve?
Yep.
Of how many communities were brought down in their, their energy requirements because of this? Like, what percentage of cities got kicked out?
Right, I don't have the statistics statewide. My colleague is on the phone. But I can tell you in the communities that I manage, which there are 9, there were 2.
And
Blue
we're one of
was
them.
one other
Okay.
community, and they did elect to increase their purchase. They were a little bit different situation than you. They went down to 40%, so it was a 10% difference. We went down to 33. Little bit of a different comparison, but similar price.
Is it a similar sized community to
Much
ours?
larger.
Can I ask a question? So if you choose, and I do the thing at my residence, I remember signing up for it, but I think everyone wants to know perhaps if you don't do the, whatever it's called, the blue thing, and get renewable, where is our power coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Pacific Power has made a lot of commitments and a lot of changes to our own electrical system. So I would say in about 3 to 5 years, we're gonna be getting much closer to what we consider carbon-free resources only. So
That doesn't answer my
wind,
question
solar.
at all. Where is the power coming from that's not green now?
Go ahead, you're running the meeting.
Yes, would you answer this last question and then we'll just move on because this is not a question and answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. So if you would answer, where's the energy coming from?
So we have wind, hydro, solar. We do still have a coal fleet. None of that is located in Oregon. All of it is located in our east side states, primarily in the state of Utah and in Wyoming. And we do have some natural gas, again, not located in the state of Oregon.
Thank you.
Wait, so you're saying the coal shipped from those states to Oregon or?
Shipped via the transmission system? Yes.
Not the actual coal?
Not the actual coal. None of that touches the state of Oregon. And by 2030, none of that will be coming to Oregon.
So the Boardman plant is down.
That's PGE's.
Oh,
And I have no understanding or insight into what is happening with that facility.
Can we take a hit like that, Justine? Master of money.
You can take any hit you want, it's just that if revenue comes tighter, then something else would have to be cut. So it has to be one of those things where if you make a commitment and there isn't enough money, then we have to look at reducing somewhere else.
The other side of
It's
that.
not probably a tremendous expense.
No, it wouldn't be that much extra for us, maybe a few $1,000s in the high side.
Right.
Okay, but I did see in the news that there was an expected rise by PG&E, which is not new, of up to 17% increase on power rates. Are we expecting to see anything like that here in this area?
We will be filing a rate case in Oregon. I do not have information, I mean, it's like reading the tea leaves right now. A lot of any cost increases that you're gonna see are all driven by power costs. So that the cost of actually purchasing the power from the market or the cost of doing maintenance and business on the actual power plant facilities themselves.
Thank you.
so you, I mean, basically PPNL is smaller than PG&E.
We're actually much larger.
Oh, you
It's
are?
it's PGE in Oregon, Portland General
Yeah,
Electric.
yeah.
PGE and E in California, we are smaller than
Yeah.
them.
But you guys are smart by that. then they ask for the rate increase first, and so you're not looking. Like,
Okay. Peter, you got something?
Yeah, so just if people are interested in advocacy on this issue, the legislature did pass legislation that allowed larger solar facilities that didn't have to meet what are called the FSEC standards, which are the standards for like a nuclear power plant. And the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife has appealed almost every one of those applications. So if you're trying to site a solar facility of more than like 250 acres, which regularly, like the place to put them was in Central Oregon in the high desert, where there's no water, this is just sagebrush. And ODF&W has appealed almost everyone that I'm aware of. And so that is making it more difficult for companies like them to buy that renewable energy.
Why did they do that?
So they cannot, there's a requirement of habitat mitigation and they cannot agree on what habitat mitigation, the one that I worked on, which then went to the Court of Appeals. They would never tell us what mitigation was necessary to meet their standard. It was actually also why they opposed that legislation. And you know, there are companies out there willing to invest in this, and we had no opposition from Land Watch or Thousand Friends or any of the organizations, because this was just high desert 5 miles outside of UGB, and ODF&W appealed. And my understanding is it appealed almost every application of over 250 acres. And so it's really hamstrung Oregon's ability to tap into those renewable resources.
Which is the benefit of Pacific Power because we're multi-state, so we can build elsewhere and use our transmission system and it's connected into our grid. Most of our solar is actually in Utah.
So in plain English, you're saying basically for people who don't, like me, who don't understand, you're making the electricity somewhere else and shipping it to us.
And if it's interconnected to the Pacific Power grid, so our transmission level, it's considered within our serving our customers.
So they were concerned about the effects of putting the solar in on the wildlife in the area?
So the project that I worked on had no mapped habitat on the site, and it was non-arable. So there was no water, so it couldn't be farmed, and there was no mapped habitat, and they appealed. And they've appealed. So the large installations aren't going to be in the valley and they aren't going to be on the coast. They're going to be either in Eastern Oregon or Central, where it's high desert, so you have a lot of sun. And you have giant tracts of land that, you know, don't have any water. Yeah, so they, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any that they haven't appealed.
Gary,
Yes, ma'am.
this document is in your packet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So it should be,
If anybody's interested, it's available on our website that she just talked about. Pricing.
Okay.
And again, Mary, you don't have to make a decision today, and it does sound like there might be interest in hearing more on energy topics. I'm happy to come back and dive deep on anything or have individual conversations with residents. Y'all are my customers too. So yeah, anytime I'm happy to talk about that. And on the rate front, I'll go back to the rate question I received. Anytime I get rate information, that is always something that I share with my city managers, and sort of, you know, interested parties.
All right. Anybody else?
Can we get back into this?
Get back into it or get out of
Bring
it
it back.
now and then come back to it?
I don't know, can we get back into the EPA Green Power Partnership?
I think if there was a motion made to join back in and spend the money. And Master of Money has already told us, well, that's something else if it interferes, but we can do that.
Okay,
So we are, our water plant has a lot of electricity
Turn electricity into water.
But it, like I said, it's not tremendous amount of money.
Well, let me just be clear about this. Are we in any of the blue sky programs?
33%.
You are currently a purchaser and participant in the Blue Sky program, yes.
Okay, so what would cost us more? Moving up in the level of the blue sky participation versus the EPA green?
So the Blue Sky program is your avenue into the EPA Green Power Community Program.
Oh, I see.
So Blue Sky is just the program that Pacific Power offers its customers. The EPA sets the other designation.
Right, so if we went up to the blue sky visionary partner at 50%, does that automatically put us back into the EPA green?
You have to be at 50% for the EPA program, yes.
Right.
But right now, I mean, you can talk about the city of Gerhart being a supporter of renewable energy. You are a supporter of renewable energy.
This is a feel-good issue.
Yeah, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it is. Except unless Master Money here tells us that we have to cut somewhere else.
Well, it all depends where we cut. I know some things like that instead of this.
And that depends upon revenues. I mean, we could have strong property tax revenues, or we could have strong transaction tax, and we could have not affect anything. It's the long-term effects, but this is something you can opt out anytime,
So let me just ask one more question, Justine. So we could try this for 6 months, and then if it's not working out financially, we can rethink it. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, she said you could opt in and out anytime, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if push comes to shove and it's looking like a financial strain, you have to philosophically as a group, just like when you put budgets together, you have to decide, is environmental stewardship and how you justify it worth cutting porta potties at the fire station, right? I mean, those are the kind of decisions you have to make and kind of weigh, and why do you do this, and why is this important, and.
But is 6 months a good time period for you to make an evaluation? Or should we go longer, should we go shorter? I'm just trying to get a sense of.
I think that you would want to look at fiscal year.
And I think with the cost difference, you know, what we're looking at is a couple $100 a month, you know, on the high side. So you know, from what I'm hearing from the city council is that you'd like to participate in this. And so I would probably recommend that you folks go with 50% tile. And then we can keep an eye on it. And if we have recommendations to get out of it in the future, because we're having some revenue problems, then we can do that. But it's not that much money. And if it's something council would like to do, I think we'd accomplish it.
So we don't need to put a time frame on it then?
I would just move forward, and then if we need to make recommendations to you, that we need to make some changes, we'll do so.
Okay, I make a motion that we move to the Blue Sky Visionary Partner so that we can be moved into the EPA Green Power.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, before I commit to this, I mean, it's not that I don't want to support you in this. Let me just say that, but I'm not willing to give up porta potties. I'm gonna be clear on that, so I personally would like more information on what we're gonna have to give up in order to be able, because we are a small community. And I think that we should do the part that we can, and she's already saying that we're already part of the green, we're already doing green things as much as we can. But we have a lot of expenses, we're already struggling to meet some of our expenses. I'd like to know what, I wanna know what we're gonna have to give up in order to be able to say, you know, be able to carry this particular tag.
And probably this year, likely nothing major, because we haven't spent all of our money in the budget, so it would be a matter of maybe just encouraging people to not spend all of their budget.
Okay.
All right, well,
Because it's not something we put a line item in, so what would happen is if we implement this, we would implement it and then we would start watching those budget line items, right? Because those budget line items look like they're going to max out, if we're not gonna have enough money in those line items, where would we look to take that money? who hasn't spent money, then we would, when we do our resolution and our appropriations, moving stuff around, we would look at maybe canceling the program, if that would be an option. Or finding money, we have $20,000 left in a line item in non-departmental, and we can move it up there.
Well, we're looking at $624 a year increase, which isn't, again, like you said, it's not huge.
No, it's not significant.
But I would like to go on the record as saying I'm not gonna give them porta potties for it, so.
That was an
Okay.
example.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? I believe we just passed it. All right, Elisa, thank you very much for coming in and sharing this with us.
Thank you. I'll work with Chad on the contract.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Moving on, public communication. Here we go. Anyone wishing to address the city council concerning items of interest not on the agenda may do so at this time. All remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Requests to comment electronically must be submitted by email to the city recorder at info@cityofgearhart.com no later than 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. In-person attendees wishing to speak are required to sign in prior to the meeting. I have 6 people on my paper. That's 30 minutes. So if you feel like you can do it in less than 5 minutes, that'd be wonderful, but you have 5 minutes. Chad, are you on the timer? And I'm gonna really try with these, but I'm not good with names. I got Lisa Gladsby.
That's Liza Gadsby and Liza Gadsby.
Okay, thank you, Liza.
Yeah, I apologize again for speaking out earlier.
That's quite all right. Would you give your name and your address, please?
Liza Gadsby, 248 North Ocean Avenue.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, a little bit, I'm just gonna rehash elk a bit. It's a dead deal, but not a done deal. Thank you, whoever here put these out for people the other night on Monday. When Fish and Wildlife was here, I found the 4 articles in there by Bob Atia for BCC Road, very useful. If you haven't read it, read it. There's a stack of them free at Safeway in Seaside. And thank you, I have not seen. I don't wanna rehash too much, but our elk herd is gone. I appreciated your comments on Monday, Councilor Hofer. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, that it was somewhat of a slaughter. I have a few questions because I don't expect anyone to answer them. These are just issues, because I think this is, the elk are dead, but the issue's not dead. The Elk Collaborative, which I read a little bit about, Gearhart was a member, 22, 23, 2024, we're over halfway through it. Over $600,000 was allocated. Where's the money gone to? I think, I'm hoping that even though the elk are dead, that the collaborative will not be dead, and that maybe as a member of the collaborative, Gearhart would hope to reach out to the many other members and have another meeting, find out where that 600,000 has gone in terms of research or whatever. Although it's almost a moot point now. And I also appreciate that you asked Atwood from Fish and Wildlife why the collaborative was not informed of the coal plan, and I thought his answer that he wasn't legally required to do so was a bit bumptious for a civil servant. But anyway, the elk are gone. I'm thinking about the future. The elk may come back. They may not, but they may come back. It may be a long time. I think that gives this city and the residents here in council time to think about, are we gonna be an elk-friendly city? What's gonna be Gearhart's policies going forward into the future? I was mildly alarmed Councilor Gold, pardon me, that you commented the other night that you didn't want to see elk west of 101.
No, I don't.
Yeah, okay, and there are other people in your heart that may feel as you do, but I think there are a lot of people who don't. Maybe there's some way to take a poll over the next year and see how people feel. But regardless, you can't stop them from coming. I mean, we can't fence them out. It's not possible.
That's correct.
So short of shooting them once they enter the city limits, we're gonna have to have a policy if they come back. Are we gonna be the little elk-friendly town that everybody kind of, made us kind of famous for a while? There was, you also mentioned the issue that they're dangerous. Yes, they're dangerous. All wild animals are dangerous. But so are dogs. So are bull cattle, so are people. And we can have rules in place, we can have the educational signage up, which I think is good, we probably need more, but you can't stop people from doing stupid things. And so I just want to close on that. In the future, let's have a policy, let's be ready for the elk if they come back. And legally, City Attorney, Mr. Watts, I am curious if, since elk can be dangerous, people will do stupid things, they like to take selfies with elk, and you can't stop them from being stupid. Is the city at any way at risk if somebody is hurt?
I mean, someone can always sue the city, but
Would they have any grounds to?
I wouldn't be concerned about it. And we've had the elk for, I don't know, over 6 years, and I don't think we've had some incidents with cars on the highway that I'm aware of. But I don't think we've had any elk on human violence.
Yeah, so we should, I mean, the fact that it's kind of a non sequitur then, isn't it?
Well, and I just want to clarify, people can't discharge a firearm within city limits. And people cannot kill an elk within city limits. It's prohibited. So any culling of elk that occurred in an unincorporated Clatsop County. It did not occur in the city. And if that had happened, it would have been illegal. And so if people think that happened, it didn't. And if it did, they need to let us know when and where and all that information, because that cannot happen. It's illegal to kill an elk within the city of Gerhart.
Or anything else.
Right, yes.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you, Lisa.
Liza.
Liza, sorry.
That's okay, Mayor.
Sarah Bitterman, name and address, please.
Sarah Bickerman Gage, I live at 5040 Fairway Drive North, in the Gerhart Highlands. And our family's had a house in that area for about a little over the same house for over 30 years. And we've lived there permanently now or full-time for about 3 years. And one of the greatest pleasures for us in living there is watching the elk on the dunes. We've seen enormous herds. We saw a parade that went by for about 5 minutes once. And we've had 3 babies born in the forest right across from our house, close enough to film with the cell phone. And so we really appreciate the elk being there. And we found out about this killing on the western property in June by accident. We stumbled across it by talking to someone who was familiar with what had happened there. And we spent the last 3 or 4 months trying to find out if the story we had heard was actually true and what actually happened out there. And we spent quite a bit of time talking to Paul Atwood on the phone, my husband and I did, and we peppered him with questions, much like the ones that you shared with him the other night. And it's important to say that we were all in the audience here and we're listening to Paul and understand that a number of the things that he said either are not consistent with what other people have said about what happened on that property, or they weren't consistent with what he told us before. And that I would suggest that the council take this with a grain of salt. I won't take your time to go through all of the examples of things he said that weren't quite right, but I might put them in writing and send them to you later. I think the main point to make here is that killing close to 80 elk on 40-acre property with horse pasture is a disproportionate response to the level of damage that occurred. It's just complete overkill, pardon the pun. But, and that's the problem that people have. You can wade into all the details about, whether you can get 5 permits or whether you get another one after you've taken one of the 5. I mean, there are a lot of details you can get into. But the real question is, was that an appropriate response to what happened on that horse pasture? And really what happened on the horse pasture? Because it really wasn't obvious what the level of the extent of the damage was in that property. And other people have horses north of there, south of there, in other directions, and don't file these damage tags. So they're dealing with the damage somehow. So I think everybody that has elk has a little bit of damage. They eat the begonias off our front porch. Like you said, Preston, they love Espalonia bushes, make prune ours. Thank you very much. They actually do a pretty good job. But we deal with it because we love having the elk there. So what I think the important point here is that, Paul was very adamant with us and with the reporters that have written about this, that this was not a culling. And technically that's true, because a culling, according to Oregon law, means that it's done by government hunters or their representatives, and the money has to go to charity. Well, excuse me, not the money, the elk has to go to charity. But in this case, it's not that easy to get a lot of elk carcasses for charity, because the carcasses have to be processed and then they have to be frozen to make them available to people who can use the meat. And that capacity is not readily available in the North Coast. And so there isn't a clear path to culling elk other than using this damage program, which really wasn't the purpose of it in the first place. And so, we don't know what really happened. We don't know who organized this hunt. And if you think about the logistics of doing this over a multi-year period with all these individual permits and all these individual hunters, somebody organized this and somebody paid for it. And that didn't come out in the presentation you had the other night. Now, I don't know who that was. It would be interesting to know. But the requirement that we go for public records requests, we did that, by the way, and they decided they wanted us to talk to them on the phone instead and didn't respond to the public records request that we submitted about 3 months ago. So that's not an easy path to get information about what happened. So I guess the last thing I'll say is that the city of Gerhardt has been named several times, including this afternoon in a piece by the Astorian, as one city that's considering a culling operation. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know whether the city is considering a culling operation or not, but it would be really interesting to know. And I've heard that 3 or 4 times, and I believe that the mayor of Warrenton said at some point in correspondence about all this on social media and personal conversations that only Gerhardt and Warrenton were considering a culling operation. And I don't know what, what's behind that. Maybe you all know.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Sarah. I know that in 21, when we signed the elk collaborative, culling was a minor point in the whole framework of the agreement. But it was not our intention to use culling as the only means of controlling the elk. We have corridors. We're supposed to have corridors, we're supposed to have fencing requirements. But the culling was part of the agreement. And we did sign that agreement. And it's never happened. What this is the damage tags were used in
Private property.
on private property by a private individual that we have no control over. And there's nothing the city can do about that. But yes, we did sign the elk collaborative and it did have culling in it. But culling is not what happened, is not what has been happening for 3 years. Yes, Pete.
Yeah, so they had specified that if a determination was made that the herd was unhealthy, that they listed a variety of things that were expectations. And again, for that to have occurred, we would have needed to know what the size of the herd was. We would have needed to, it would have actually taken legislation from the Oregon legislature Because as my recollection is there was a program for deer, the culling of deer in near urban areas, but there was not one for elk, so it had to be parallel to that. And as you stated, as somebody stated, that elk meat would have needed to be donated to a food bank or other nonprofit serving. I mean, there's strict requirements. It would have taken a legislation by the legislature, which seemed not particularly likely, and then all of these findings and other processes, none of which occurred. And so our view at the time, given the amount of process that would need to occur, was that a culling outcome was incredibly unlikely. Yet that was something in order to get the funds, that we needed to look at all options. I mean, the elk fencing's like 18 feet tall, and that would not have been at all palatable to the people of Gerhart. But we had to say that we would consider elk fencing, because that could be a recommendation. So when we went into this process, there was a lot that we didn't know. And I think the way that I viewed this is that the city council and the city agreed to keep an open mind, to follow the science, to consider the totality of all circumstances, and that we were not allowed to take certain things off of the table, because there were a variety of stakeholders that were around this, some of whom had different, wants, needs, expectations. So did we ever consider culling? No. And we didn't even have the data that would have led us to an answer one way or the other on culling, because as I understand it, that was never determined how many herds there were or how many elk were in the herds. And that was basic data that would be needed in order to come up with best practices.
Thank you, Peter.
Can I say something?
Yes.
If the elk or any species is culled, and they do have to give it to local food banks. And I'm on the board of the South County Food Bank, and I work there. And this summer, we've had bear, we've had buffalo, we've had meat, beef, chicken, pork. We have never had elk. So if anything's been culled, it hasn't been given to us. That's all.
Thank you. All right, moving on. This is Jeff Gage, name and address, please.
I'm Jeff Gage, 5040 Fairway Drive in the Highlands, Gerhart. And I would, I'm with her. She already described it. She already described it. We like the elk. And I do have some great video of my Escaloni being trimmed right outside my office window. So, okay, so what I'm here to talk about is to correct another misconception we keep seeing crop up coming from ODFW, which is that they're trying to minimize what was done by saying, oh, it's 200, it's 3 elk herds, 250 elk, okay, that's a line of bull. It's completely false. I don't know whether it's because they are misconstruing the data, but they're claiming that it's coming from the National Park Service's GPS collar data. As Paul said the other night, the GPS collars were on 7 elk, 4 of those collars are still in operation. They go back to 2019, and it last. I have the data here that shows the plots out where the collar were from 2019 through May of 2022, which covers the first 2 years of this program. And what it shows is that virtually all, if not all, of the elk that were killed were what you would consider Gerhart herds. Not 3 different herds, not a bunch of elk coming down from Camp Bradley. So it's all, virtually all of the, I guess based on the color data, virtually all the ones that Gerhart herd, which is why we have seen approximately a 90% reduction in the number of elk that we see at our house over the last 3 years. So I brought printouts from a presentation that National Park Service did in spring of 2022. I don't have enough because I ran out of ink for everybody.
We'll make sure we get copies to everybody.
Okay, so there were 7 elk. So elk number 1, which they referred to as A in their presentation, you can see where all the dots are. That elk was up around Astoria Airport. You guys can't see this, I'm sorry. Nowhere near the property. Elk number 2, which they referred to as elk D, also was another elk that was up in the Astoria Airport herd. That was kind of the herd that was more concerned with Fort Clatsop when they commissioned these elk studies, just because it was in their area. So on the 3rd page is 2 more elk, one of which was still in operation as through May of 2022, and you can see the range there. That range is pretty much. You might consider that the Camp Rylea herd. Neither of these elk that were collared in that herd went anywhere near this property. And then adding in another elk that was basically probably in the same herd, the Camp Rylea herd. Okay, again, 3rd elk, or 4th elk that is, again, stays up there, never goes anywhere near that property. And now we finally get a winner, what's called elk F in this on page 5. You can see that its range is effectively north of Sur Pines up to Sunset Beach. Okay, it looks like that one elk maybe spent a day or 2 in a period of a year down there, that property, but certainly was not frequenting, and that herd did not frequent that property. Okay. All right, and now we're down to the 7th elk of the 7 collars. It shows elk B, that shows its range runs from up through the middle, halfway up Surf Pines and down as far as 12th Avenue down at Seaside, includes the Seaside Airport. So what this shows, the color data actually shows is what's been presented is incorrect. It is not 3 herds, it is 1 herd. That is why this herd is so shrunken, is all these elk, virtually all these elk, were taken from this 1 herd that ranges from halfway up Surf Pines down into Seaside. So in other words, the Gerhardt herd. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Make sure we get copies to everyone. All right, next up. Terry Goodrick.
My wife wants to go before me, so I'll go.
I'm on there next. Can I just go? And then he can go?
Would you be Deb?
No,
No,
Dina.
Dina.
That's Dina?
Oh, or are you before me? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, never mind. Just.
Okay,
So
so
before me, they might as well go together. They're married.
Okay, fine.
Well, okay, so.
Let's start. Terry, do you want your wife to go first?
yes,
Thank you. All right.
He's a gentleman.
Name and address, please.
Dina Goodrich and 87265 Toad Hollow Road. So we are just out of City of Gerhardt limit, we're the Highlands Lane and then us. And I just want to say that the elk come on our property all the time, and this is our neighbor. And we have 4 acres, they have 3, and then there's 3 behind us that kind of, I think, abuts this guy. And it's just, sorry, to see them and how there are 6 now, we get 6. And there was over 100 a couple of years ago when we lived down here. They lay on our property. I don't think that any ethical hunter would ever do. I appreciate everything you said, and you unfortunately answered my fear, was that they would be laying out there and slaughtered. And if you're around them and you hear them, if they get separated, they let out a noise, they squeal for each other. And so if they're all on this property and they're laying out there, they're getting slaughtered amongst, you know, the others. And it's just, I don't understand allowing this. And I would like to know how many property owners have been given this?
That would be.
The permit, is it just him? And I'm sorry I'm asking you guys, but the answer wasn't given the other night and we couldn't say anything. So I'm just like, I don't know who to go to. Maybe you can tell us who to go to. But I mean, I really have issues with it. It's really inhumane the way they're doing it. And like I said, no ethical hunter. That is not hunting. There's no hunt to it.
Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, that really worked out. That really worked out. We got a lot of good information out of that.
They're hunters.
Just as the guy from Fish and Wildlife said, all the elk belong to us. There's the person that you go to. And if you don't get the answers from him, you go to the governor, which
I will.
he just said all the elk belong to the governor.
Okay, well, I had to get that off my chest because we live amongst them. They were there before us. And I have dogs, I worry about them, but we respect them.
I feel the same way because, I mean, okay, you got the archery season, you got the permits that the Weston's handing out, and then you have the rifles.
Yeah,
And then
and we
you have
can
the
hear
rifles.
them, we can
And
hear
it's
the gunshots.
And as the state police officer said, I mean, the game warden said, anything outside of the incorporated city limits on the west side of the highway, which I always thought that they, 10 years ago, I always thought that there was no hunting west of the Highway 101. That was when.
It shouldn't be.
That was when McLaren and those guys were state game officers, right? Well, now I just found out that you can shoot, you can shoot in Surf Pines. You can shoot in the Highlands.
Our property abuts Pinehurst. And
you can shoot in Pinehurst.
he is just to the north of Pinehurst.
Yeah, no, you guys are unincorporated, right? So anybody unincorporated, as the game warden said, you can shoot.
Okay. So do you have more you want to add?
Well, I guess you guys can't answer this. I was just wondering if they were mainly focusing on females because we're down to 2 females. One does have, she has the collar and she has a tag in her ear. And so they left her. And there's a young one, and then there's another female, and there's 3 males. So there's 6 that I'm sure go over to, Highlands, and I know they go into Pinehurst. And
The damage tag program is supposed to be females only that are taken.
And that killed me when you got the answer that 60% were pregnant. Who does that? I'm thoroughly disgusted.
Are you?
Done? I probably better be. I really wish the coward.
I don't wanna cut you off.
No, okay, but I wish the coward was here because I would like to have a conversation with him, and I'd probably go to jail if I went over there. Sorry, I'm just expressing my opinion.
I know, and
I'm not sorry.
And apropos of nothing, they can't handle a public records request on the phone. Like, there's strict time limits to comply with public records requests. It has to be in writing, even if there's nothing responsive to the request, which seems extremely unlikely to have to respond in writing.
Okay. We'll go on to Terry.
Okay, same address,
I'm sorry, would you state your name?
Terry Goodrich,
It's
87265 total. Basically, you guys answered and said a lot that I was gonna say. We've lived there or had that property for 5 years. We would sit out there in the truck and watch this herd come by. I mean, they'd be all around us, 5 feet away, over 100 of them. I got more information from him tonight than from Paul that was factual. You can't tell me 100 years ago, those elk didn't go down to that beach because they like salt. It's just like saying Mount St. Helens erupted, and they said, oh, the fish aren't gonna be out in Tool River for 10 years, 25 years. You know what, 2 years later, those fish were up there. It's crazy, some of the stuff they say. All those females they took. So prior to that, you know, those bow hunters and those gun hunters took all those bulls, because during summer, there was about 20 in the herd only this year that came through. 2 of them were the females and the rest were all bulls. So now we're rested. We only have 3 bulls, 2 females and a calf. You know, it was a slaughter. And I know there's nothing you guys can do about it, but I don't know. Just like everybody else, we're just frustrated. Because it's one person doing it, and how do we stop this person from doing it? It's not farmland. Like the guy said Monday, he's not fertilizing the property. Did he ever go back out there and look at the fence? I bet you he didn't maintain that fence. I go by with my bike and I drive by there and I look at this piece of property. The field's up this high. It's not farmland, and he's getting taxes reduced because he called it farmland. It's just a crock. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Deb?
So my name is Deb Attia, and my husband wrote the article in the Gazette. We did about 2 weeks solid research.
Jen,
and
can we get your address, please?
Oh, I live in Cannon Beach, P.O. Box 1426, Cannon Beach. I did the elk flyers for Cannon Beach. So in Cannon Beach, our city manager denied and the city council denied culling. We're neighbors, and it affects all of us, because somebody got up at city council a couple weeks ago and says, can we start doing culling? And everybody just looked at it like, no. We value wildlife, it's magical, and tourists come to Cannon Beach, they love it. They love it, we would never take the elk from them. We do not have problems with elk. Yeah, sure, people are taking close, but the elk are so domesticated that they kind of just stand there. And so we don't have problems with them doing it. I mean, you could talk to Chief Jason, there's not problems. They get hit by cars. Okay, so elk belong to, now we learned that tonight, thank you very much, the governor, because that's where I'll be going with all of you, okay? And people of Oregon, to all of us, that's why I'm here to talk, because it is an Oregonian issue. It's North Coast issue. So I am here to speak for the elk who have no voice. And she has her heart is in this, and my heart's in it, because I love animals. I was raised on a 25-acre farm with 80 Shetland ponies, 24 Black Angus, and 12 Arabian horses. And there's plenty of grass for everybody, okay? So I'd like to know how the elk hurt the grass. Okay, I didn't get that answer. How do elk hurt the grass? That was the answer. So 77 elk, I think we got lipstick on a pig here. 77 elk in a field, slaughtered to lay in fields. They were habituated, and so they're slaughtered. And I think anybody who has a heart that could do something like that is not somebody. I was asked to come ride horses at the Westons. I'll never go there. Okay. Paul Atwood was accurate on several statements that we researched. The Collaborative North Coast Land Conservancy, we know some of the key people, and they have not been notified, and we're not notified about this. There's 26 people on it. And how many did he really know? Did he go down and ask? Because really, was there any kind of public comment on this or anybody in the area? Because it does involve Gerhardt, because these elk came to your city. And you saw the Northwest Field Guide that the OPB did. I hope all those beautiful elk that tourists love, that he loved, that Oregon loves, they're gone. And it was done in secrecy. There's 3 different data to support his inaccuracies about the herds. And I think Jeff covered that well. So I would like to know what the property damage was. Now, we have horses, and I've been kicked by a horse, the dog had a dog killed by a horse, horses do damage like elk do. Cows chase me and very scary, but elk, I just don't understand what kind of damage they did to the property. So if, the horses did damage, the cows did damage to the fences. So they're not hard to fix. So what kind of fencing do they have? Knowing the hunters on the western property, there's their foreman's a hunter. So I'm here for the future. I'd like to see it stop. And I'm gonna bring awareness to it every way. And I have a social media platform. And it was extreme. 77 elk is extreme. And how many more that we don't know about. I'm kind of emotional about this too, but anyway, elk damage. Okay, so I wanna know the extent of the damage. Wanna know what kind of fences they had to justify killing 77 elk. I think there was some sort of partnership going there with the Westons and both Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. That's just from our research. That's kind of what we summed up. There was no accountability. And he took it as a judge, jury, and the executioner is what happened. So a future plan, I say stop the Westons from being able to, I know you can't do it, but this is my goal. They should not be able to kill any more elk on their property. Paul Atwood, in my mind, should be fired, be held accountable for his actions. And people should be involved in the community and be asked what they think. Because people like this care about seeing elk. And like I said, Oregon Field Guide, if anybody can watch Oregon Field Guide and feel good about killing all those elk, then they're not people I want in my life.
Exactly.
Or in my community. And I'm glad I live in Cannon Beach for that reason, because
Time's up.
Okay.
When you got to the Cannon Beach part, we had to know.
May I say something about that?
You
You're
bet.
talking about the 77 elk like they were slaughtered in 1 year.
3 years.
But you neglected to say that, but it was over a 3-year period.
That's a lot of elk.
Yeah, I know it is.
It was more than that.
There's
Well, I'm
been more
sure it
than
was.
that, because we
Okay,
would count them.
We're not gonna break down into back and forth discussion. We want to get through this by 9 o'clock if we can. I do.
That time.
I'm sorry, all right, so the next thing on the list is written correspondence. And everyone got the notice from Nuveen, which is Lewis and Clark Timberlands, and the fact that they're going to do thinning. Any questions on that?
I have,
Yeah.
where is it?
Yeah, where is it?
Isn't it up by the old dump?
I don't know, it just says.
I believe that's-
Township 5.
We have 64, 65 acres that are up above Thompson Falls neighborhood. Excuse me, folks. We're not quite done with the meeting. So
So above Thompson Falls?
yeah, above Thompson's Falls, about 65 acres that they have up there, that we have, which is part of the watershed of Thompson Falls. That butts up to some of the properties that they're looking at above that. So we are adjacent to it. That does not involve any property that there are those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, I have another question about that too. So I'd like to know from them what the process is for this thing that they're going to do. I don't know if you know, Chad, or how does that work?
Well, I know it's private property. I know that they have, they manage their forests.
No, I'm asking for specifics, so does
Yeah, that's.
somebody go and tie a little marking tape around each tree they're gonna thin? Or do they just take a machine in and the guy who's running the machine go, well, I'm gonna take out that one, that one. I just am curious about their process, so.
I think that would be something you've got to communicate with them about.
You'd have to go to Naveen's corporate headquarters, Classic County headquarters, which is on the same road.
Up Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark's on the left-hand side there.
Who's gonna get you a contact? for somebody to talk to.
Well, it says if you have questions, please contact me.
Look how quick that was.
Well,
That'll work. Yeah, and Jason, he's, I think, newer to this area, but he's been pretty responsive with fire department, things like that, so it seems like pretty good local guy to work with.
okay, are you good now?
Yes.
All right, Chad, give us the synopsis on the resolution.
Certainly, I'll just go through that really quickly. Council was presented with, this is resolution 991, a resolution implementing water conservation pricing, adjusting rates, and repealing resolution 990. Council was presented with a request resolution reflecting a 15% increase in basic and above basic consumption rates at the August council meeting, and it was unanimously approved. Steve Donovan returned in September to present a proposed system of block pricing with 6 consumption blocks, emphasizing the need to tailor water pricing to local circumstances and legal requirements. In the end, council opted for Donovan's recommended streamlined 4-block pricing structure, where there isn't a price change until the 3rd block. The attached resolution includes all changes implemented in resolution 990, but repeals it in order to add the water conservation block pricing to the section 2 fee schedule. So your options are to approve resolution 991, make changes, or take another action. We're available for any questions.
Questions?
So Chad, if I'm using less than 10 cons a month.
0.
Zero?
Beyond the 15% that you approved.
Yeah, right.
For this last time, the price increase would be 0.
Okay.
Any other discussion, questions? I will listen for a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution 991.
I'll give you a second.
Okay. Anyone got any discussion on it? Know that we've got a motion and a second. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay. Moving on. We have no old business, we have new business. Anyone wishing to speak on our new business has 3 minutes. The first issue will be Seaside Water Mutual Organization Understanding, MOU. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on. Chad, will you read the synopsis?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The city of Deer Heart has water purchase agreements with both the cities of Warrenton and Seaside, and they both expired in 2022. The new agreement with Warrenton was just approved to sign August 2nd. Seaside has provided us with the attached mutual organizational understanding, MOU. They will be presenting to their council at this month's meeting. A notable change from the previous version is a reciprocation in the event of a water emergency. Seaside's Public Works Director Mike Dimick met with Mark McFadden to ensure the proper operation of the valve and the connection history. In order for the city of Deer Heart to proceed with the agreement, council must make a motion. So city staff does recommend the council approve entering into this attached water memorandum of understanding with the city of Seaside. You'll see there are plenty of items in there that text our system as well, and this would include water that would be considered extra to the city of Deer Heart. So if we got into a place or a point to where we weren't able to provide extra water, we would not be required to do so. This does work back and forth. We have a valve system that can work both ways and meter the water both ways. So it just depends on how we operate that valve.
So we can say no?
We can.
Even though we've signed this agreement.
Yes, ma'am. We can say we don't have available water to do so.
Who makes that decision?
It would be Mark McFadden would be the first one I would consult, and then the rest of the staff as well. And see what we had, and that was available, but in an emergency situation, if we had the availability to help, we would be keen to do it so.
And where does water come from in that pipe?
Depends on where, what time of year it is. If we are sharing water with Warrenton at that moment, then some of the water could be coming through Warrenton. pass through Gearhart and then into Seaside. Or for this particular period of time of year, where we're pretty well 100% on our own water, it would come strictly from us. And it would depend on the quantities that were necessary.
And does that reduce the amount of water Gearhart would have if we were sending water down the seaside?
Potentially so, yes, ma'am. We also have an emergency water agreement with the city of Warrenton. Warrenton and Seaside do not have that agreement together. We're kind of passed through on that. But that could be a factor, and that's something that we would take into consideration before we would make those calls. But in an emergency situation, we would try to figure out how.
Who operates the valve?
Not me. They won't let me into the valve box, sir. But that would be Mark McFadden, Stephen Peterson, Gage McFadden, and Joe. Thank you.
Can we get Peter's take on this?
Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons why we want to do this. We have a connection to Seaside. It's probably unlikely under current circumstances that we would use that. In order to really, for us to use their water and then to use ours, we would need to upsize the pipes. The idea though is in an emergency, we would have the option and they would have the option. It adds some redundancy to our system, whether we use it or not. And also, again, we had agreed when we negotiated our deal with Warrenton, we had agreed to both see if we could get more water rights ourselves, as well as see whether we could get water from other places. And you know, if we don't do this deal with Seaside, the only other place where we could get water if Warrenton were to shut us off, which we don't anticipate at all, but we would have to truck it in. And you know, both the cost of that and the environmental cost of that would be far more significant than this. So this is, I guess, a first step. I think our hope is that we'll get additional water rights so that we can be water independent. But if we had an emergency or they had an emergency, just like how we share police and fire and those resources, this would be another way where we could help a neighbor in need if we don't need it ourselves. And the same for us, they're not required to provide to us if we need it. Though I think, you know, everyone wants to be a good neighbor.
Can you point out to me where in this agreement document it says we can say no? Please.
It's under the definition for part of it is available water, page 1.
Yeah, so available water is the quantity of water from the Seaside system and the Gearhart system determined by Seaside and Gearhart respectively. So we can unilaterally determine how much water we need, and so can they. So to the extent that we determine that we have excess water beyond what we would need, then we could sell it to them and they could sell it to us.
Even though it's an emergency.
Yeah, it doesn't, like, it's our water. I mean, somebody couldn't just go and open the valve. And there are other things that would need to happen too. This isn't a fully integrated system like Warrenton's is, but this is an important first step. And again, it is also demonstrating to Warrenton that we're complying with what we agreed to, which is to explore other options. But in order for this to really, it's unlikely that we would sell water to Seaside. Just they have more capacity than we do during times of the year where we would need it. But to really do that efficiently, we would probably need to upsize the pipes and do other things. So again, I think that this is, it's probably unlikely that this will be utilized, but there are a variety of reasons contractually and legally why it makes sense to take this first step. And then if we were to hear in a year from Warrenton that they're not going to sell us water anymore, we would probably need to get state funds in order to do the upgrades that we would use to fully use their water. And for us to get those sort of grants, it's really important to have an agreement in place so that they know that it's a viable alternative.
I think we've all sat on here in the seaside. I mean, the two cities have been joined in the hip for as long as I've been around.
We have it as a one-side agreement where we would provide them with emergency water, and now it's for Sidwell.
A motion, please.
I'll give you a motion to, misplaced it, sorry. Thank you. I give you a motion to approve entering into the attached water MOU with the city of Seaside.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. Moving on. Anyone wanting to spend 3 minutes discussing the city of Gerhardt's strategic blueprint? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will go into discussion of the strategic blueprint. Chad, the synopsis, please.
Thank you.
Here.
Oh,
There.
got it.
So, in the past, council goals were tracked differently. The city staff went through and tried to figure out ways that we can condense some of those items and then do a better job of tracking the goals. So the city councilors were individually tasked with prioritizing outstanding long and short-term goals, with staff narrowing down to the top 5 consensus goals. From that poll, the attached Gerhardt strategic blueprint was born, and we were able to identify departmental focus areas, incorporate the goals, and prioritize the direction the city could follow. That also aligns with the vision of Gerhardt's comp plan. The purpose of tonight's discussion is to present the blueprint, find out where there's support for this new format, and the items listed. The items listed were brought to you with the help of Christy. She provided the poll to you folks, collected that information, and then she put it into this format that we have seen other places as well. It seemed to be working pretty well. We think it's a pretty simple format. We think that the items on there are definitely things that we wanted to be working on and report to the city, and wanted to get your feedback about the way that this could work and whether or not you think it would be a good decision to move forward with this format or to change it out.
I like this format a lot better than having 12 pages of goals
Yeah.
and projects that are just like,
Overwhelming.
yeah, it's just like, why are we doing this? But yes, it's much better. I like it. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of them, to be honest with you.
The line at the top under principles involve citizens in the decision-making process through transparent communication. Can we include town halls and public hearings as well as transparent communication? Because transparent communication sounds like us telling them as opposed to getting citizen feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we kind of built that statement a little bit off of the Oregon laws for, land use decisions. Oregon is very progressive in its land use and the way that to get the public involved in it. But yeah, I mean, everything is open to us. We can change that statement a little bit if you'd like.
Tweak it just a little bit. It just sounds very one-way.
Those 2 statements that are up at the top are not set. Those were examples that we put in there. I would appreciate feedback on both sections. The vision is a little lofty there, but I think that the vision and the principles could be tweaked for sure.
And then
I'm sorry.
I just have one more question under the community safety part, the number 1, the priorities is continue to educate the public when mitigating hazards. What does that mean?
Educating the public,
About mitigating hazards?
yeah, it would be about hazard mitigation.
Okay. I was like, what? I mean, while we're mitigating, we're gonna educate the public or?
No, I think it's an
Sorry.
all-involved process, and
I didn't.
from grant writing to putting those items up on the shelves, and you've been very helpful with a lot of those sorts of things, so it would be hazard mitigation.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna, I don't really have a beef with it. I read communication, to me, communication is back and forth. It means listening as well as speaking, so
Right, and that's what communication is a
Yeah.
two-way street.
Like communication through meetings such as town halls, work sessions.
I didn't see
But-
it being any.
But some people might look at that and say, well, that sounds like the city communicating to us. That's all, that's.
Yeah, I don't have an objection to, I think it's fine the way it is, but if somebody else would read it the same way you do, then let's make it more clear. Thank you.
Preston, you got something?
Yeah, I have. I don't think we can talk about urban growth boundary without talking about the availability of water. I mean, if your heart right now doesn't have enough water in the summertime to fulfill our needs, and we have to rely on Warrenton, then there's no sense even talking about expanding the city of Dearborn until we have the water in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, and the issue is that, you know, we're required by state law to have a 20-year buildable land inventory. And so for us to do that, you know, we could go through a housing needs analysis that would result in a UGB expansion. And if we reach the point where, well, I would hope that we're able to get additional water rights, but hope doesn't get you that far. So if we arrive at a point where we would need to do a moratorium, then we would need to go through hearings and do that. But the overarching requirement of ours is that 20-year global lands inventory.
Yeah, but you can tell the state of Oregon that, you know, it's just like when we had the Seaside try to force us into sewers over here. Okay, because they thought that we were polluting the aquifer. And when they came down, you know, when they came down and they built the test wells, poured the dye here and wandered on down to the other well down there, and they never saw the dye.
Right.
And finally Bruce said to him, why don't you go station somebody down there when you pour the dye in here? You know, and that's how we got out of having to, you know, Seaside take Gearhart over as far as their sewer system. So without us having water, I mean, my personal feeling is, tell the state to, you know, go pack sand until you give us the water.
Yeah, so how about we flip 2 and 3? I mean, this is really up to the council. You folks put these into order on infrastructure priorities. We can take 2 and 3 and flip those.
Yeah. That's what I like to see.
With the consensus of the council, of course.
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with it because it's not like we're gonna run through this list chronologically. We're going to be running on it, you know, consecutively, right? Where all of these goals could be worked towards at the same time.
They still are, yes.
And like you said, we're gonna have, procedurally, this is just, are we gonna agree on these goals? And then we'll hash out the things that we're talking about now later, right?
Correct. And there just is a strong probability that the order of water and then UGB expansion would be 1 and 2.
Okay.
In regards to, because that's gonna be an important piece with this when we go through that. And then we recently received the grant through the county grant, received that $700,000 grant to start doing, what do you call that fancy name?
Housing needs analysis.
That thing, housing need analysis. So we're gonna be, you know, getting into that procedure here again, very soon. The city staff will have more information. So we're heading in that direction.
Okay. So it's not really necessary to change it, it's just, does everyone wanna change it? Since we're gonna be working consecutively on everything at once and getting nothing done, but just a few things.
Well, I'd rather see the water issue before the urban growth boundary issue, personally.
We can order it we can certainly order it that way. And I think that that's an important part of the UGB as we're doing our housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory, highlighting this water issue. And if the state wants us to more actively participate in growth, then we need water, right?
Exactly.
I'm not opposed to it. I respect your right to, or your thought on that. I respect the process.
Yeah, I mean, all wars in the West were fought over water.
So everybody who wants to switch it?
If that's what's holding us up from finishing up, that, it's fine with me.
You got that.
Okay, we got any other discussion on this?
No.
Okay, council concerns. Preston,
I think I've spoken everything I need to say.
Rita,
I have no concerns, but I want to thank all the people that spoke about the elk issue. I think I hear how frustrating it is, and thank you for coming. It's not a concern.
yeah, that's right.
Somebody else,
How long would that take?
The what? Sharon, you're good. Dana,
So yeah, I would like to address a couple of things that were brought up tonight. I was waiting my turn so that I didn't make things longer. The questions that I wanted to answer tonight is who do we go to? The jurisdiction for the county area is the county. And I asked him yesterday, are we the only ones who are bringing this up? And he said, yes. So that was a clue. The city of Gerhart is looking into this for you, but there's limitations on what we can do, because what I also said is this is a state agency, we don't have any authority. Somebody else said something about why did the paper say this? I don't know what the paper said, I haven't read the paper, but I can tell you, or today, but I can tell you, I was not interviewed by the paper, so I don't know where they got their information, so whatever that statement was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that was not a statement that I would have necessarily said or agreed with. Also, I would like to clarify, somebody asked me, why don't you want the city, or why don't you want the elk on this side? I want everybody to know that I am an insane animal lover, the same way that I love my kids. But I love my kids so much I don't let them play in traffic, and I'm kind of concerned for the elk when they are put into dangerous situations. And I'm willing to put my love of the elk above my personal enjoyment of having them in my yard. So my concern is that any wild animal, especially a 1,200-pound animal, crossing the roadway will do not only a great deal of damage and can really, really hurt somebody, but it's really not good for them either. They get their legs broken coming over the fences. I've gone over in the past week, pulling up pictures from all of the local elk websites of all of the pictures that people have posted of elk carrying debris from yards, you know, like hose bibs around their necks and ropes around their necks and other various stuff. That's not good for them. And I also shared with you a story of where I was minding my own business, walking with my dog, and I saw a couple of elk, and we were just gonna hustle back. And next thing I know, I literally had probably about 30 elk running towards me, and there was no place for me to go. Luckily for me and my dog, we were not injured, but I'm worried. And I know that we have, people like to say, well, nothing's happened so far. I don't believe that waiting for something to happen and then being reactive is the best approach to this. So am I saying that the elk need to be killed in our city? No, absolutely. If you ask, we will never kill elk in this city. That is never safe. As far as what they do in the county area, I have my own ideas about that again, but it's not my jurisdiction. I don't tell Warrenton what to do. I can't tell the county what to do, other than as a citizen like you. And if people were to get a meeting going at the county, I would probably attend that. But as somebody from who represents Gerhart telling somebody else in another jurisdiction what they can and they can't do, that gets us on murky ground. But I do need to say that I do not want anybody to mistake these animals for pets, or to think that it's lovely when they're in our city, because if they enter our city, they're not in safe conditions for the animal itself and for us. And that is my concern. Truly it is. I'm not willing to kill them.
I don't look at them as my pets. I respect them.
I'm not saying you are, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that people are saying, well, I don't mind if they eat my flowers. I don't mind if they eat my flowers either. What I do mind is if they crash into a car. 1,200-pound animal that hits a car is going to go up and over and into the windshield. It's going to seriously hurt whoever's in that car, and it's going to seriously hurt that animal. And that's a concern for me. It's a very serious concern for me.
But you can't control it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it, Dana?
That's it.
I have no concerns, so take a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Any discussion? Great. Thank you very much. Everyone who wants to dismiss, end this meeting, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
wait for a copy.
Oh, I'll wait